When things go sideways, will you be prepared? Some people are concerned they might have to go for a long time without electricity or even food. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you can use now, and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat, and if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve. You'll enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/drive-on so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/drive-on, but hurry, these deals won't last long. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to 4patriots.com/drive-on. Hey everybody, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and today we have a little bit of a different episode for you. Today, my guest is Steve Wolf, and when Steve spoke to firefighters about what it would take to knock down some mega fires, they joked that only a hurricane would do the job. And so Steve and his team built them one. So we're going to get into that in just a bit. I met Steve a couple weeks ago and was really intrigued by his story and everything that he was doing. Is really kind of creative usage of his background. And I want to talk to him about this background and how he implemented it to help out the firefighters fight some of these huge fires. But first, I want to welcome you to the show, Steve. I'm really glad to have you here.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott. And I know your listenership is largely service members, and yeah. I want to express my deepest thanks to each of you for the sacrifice that you make.
I appreciate that. I'm sure all the listeners appreciate that. We, I think about the different generations of service members and think back to like the Vietnam era when folks were coming back home and they're getting spit on and they're called names and treated like trash. And then I look at the generation that I'm a part of, the more recent generation of veterans and folks like you who, express your gratitude and support and all of that. I'm very grateful that there are folks like you out there who think the way that you think and express your gratitude the way that you do it, because it certainly beats the alternative, of what the way folks were way back when.
It was horrible what those kids came home to in the 70s.
Yeah. And, I feel like, whenever you see a Vietnam veteran, they got the hat on or a shirt, whatever, it's like you kind of feel like you want to go thank them and support them too, because even though their generation, their war was over years ago, they never got that support coming home. And so, it's like, just go out of your way, shake their hand, thank them for their service, welcome them home, that kind of thing,
That's a good point, Scott. And I know a lot of people's lives are affected for the rest of their lives by experiences they've been through, by hurts that they've had. And it's never too late to go back and try to right those wrongs.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for the listeners who aren't familiar with you, I know I gave a little bit of your background, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of who you are, so we kind of have that baseline before getting into this episode?
Yeah, you bet, Scott. So I've been a Hollywood special effects coordinator for about 30 years. Worked on lots of big feature films like Castaway, The Firm, lots of episodes of America's Most Wanted. Basically, if you see, things burning up, people on fire, cars crashing, I'm the on-set handyman, so to speak, who uses physics and chemistry to create on a screen the things that started out in an author's imagination. So it's great to have an idea in your script, but if you can't point a camera at it, how are you going to share that vision with an audience?
Sure.
So we have to figure out how to be the bridge from someone's imagination to a reality that can be filmed and then shared with an audience. So it's a
Yeah,
very, very practical job. It's not glamorous at all. You're, minimum 12 hours a day, wrenches and hammers and twisting wires and, mixing chemicals. And it's, it's, I think probably the most fun a scientist could have, though.
I I gotta imagine it is because I mean you're basically paid to get out there and blow stuff up and create fires and
Just like your audience, right?
yeah, right. I mean,
Mission oriented,
and you're probably getting paid more too,
probably. Yeah. Unfortunately,
So
not
you know,
not that what I was doing was worth any more, but
well, you
certainly
know
no.
what though, it provides the entertainment, and we all need that from time to time. We need to have some a little bit of relief, and what good is a war movie without the explosions, or without any of that kind of special effects that go into it. And you're right, you need to have somebody who kind of knows what they're doing and knows what chemicals to mix, and what, more importantly, probably what chemicals not to mix.
And once you
And
mix them, how far away should you stay?
yeah, how far away should you be, and
Right.
what kind of protective equipment is necessary when debris starts flying and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, there's a lot
So
of carryover between the skills of working in practical special effects and working in a military unit. That you have to understand firearm safety.
yeah,
You have to understand explosive safety. You have to be purpose oriented and mission driven, time constrained, somewhat budget constrained, working with what you have. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities. So I would think that, and we can talk later on this, but I would think that there would be a lot of crossover opportunities for someone who had a background in these areas in the military to come put those same skills to use in private industry and the film industry.
that's actually a really good point, and something I hadn't even thought of. Probably because I'm not involved in the film industry or special effects or anything like that, so it just didn't register with me. But um, yeah, I gotta imagine there is a lot of that skill set that you learn in the military, like you said, firearm safety and different things like that, that could cross over. I know there was that incident not too long ago. I think, what was it, Alec Baldwin, who like shot and killed somebody. Like, you need to have
Yeah,
somebody who knows how
he
to
killed
handle
Helena
firearms.
Hutchins, and
Yeah.
I'm the expert witness for the prosecution and
Oh,
the
okay.
and the
I
civil plaintiffs against him,
okay.
basically
You know,
saying if you pick up a gun, you're responsible for what happens with it.
that's right. I mean, that's like basic of firearm safety. If you took any absolute basic course, it's this is your responsibility now. It's in your hands,
That's right.
Um, never point a gun at something you don't intend on putting a hole in, right?
That's
That's
right. Yeah,
about as basic as it gets, I
that's
think,
right.
right?
Yeah, and
And
it doesn't matter who told you what. Like the gun's in your hands, you're responsible.
yeah, check it, clear it, make sure, double check, make sure
Right.
that it's clear, right? Um,
Yes.
so that's, I mean, and that's another thing that you learn. I mean, from basic training in the military, you learn how to make sure a weapon is cleared, make sure it's safe, and you're handling it properly. You're not pointing it at people. That you're not messing around with it. It's not a toy. Even if you
Right.
know that the gun is cleared, you still don't mess around with it.
Well, it's only cleared technically while it remains in your hands and under your control.
Yeah,
So if I clear a gun, it's cleared while I'm holding on to it. Once I hand it to you, its official status reverts to loaded until
yeah.
you clear it yourself.
And honestly, you treat a firearm as if it's loaded no matter what,
I don't
even if
say
you've
I
cleared
don't
it,
even
right?
play with the as if game. So I've taught firearms for a long time. I don't say as if is the world of make believe,
Yeah,
but
that's
death
true.
is real. So let's not approach death with talk of make believe. I
Yeah,
say all guns are always loaded.
yeah,
That's it. If it's a
exactly.
gun, it's loaded. If you take it in your hands and you personally go through the process of checking that it's clear until you hand it to someone else or set it down. When you set it down, that gun is loaded again.
Yeah,
Li-
exactly.
You know,
And you just have to use that kind of thinking uh, for safety purposes, and that
right.
way you don't end up shooting somebody or shooting yourself or shooting something
You
that
don't
you
end up
didn't
shooting
intend
somebody by
on.
accident.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
So let's talk about your transition from
Sure.
Hollywood special effects to fighting wildfires. That is to me, it seems like such a vast difference between the two. From blowing stuff up intentionally to now trying to put out these fires that were maybe unintentionally set or sometimes intentionally set. Um,
Sure.
so, what inspired you to take your expertise and develop these technologies that you've developed? And maybe we could talk about some of the technology that you developed too, for the purpose of fighting these wildfires.
Yeah. So the comparison between a military operation and a wildfire operation is fairly similar. A large group of people going in with a kind of an overall plan of what they want to get done, and access to some equipment.
Mhm.
And then if you have something special that you want to get done, you send in special guys to do that, that have additional training, whether it's the SEALs or Delta Force or whoever it is, right? And they get access to kind of cooler toys,
Yeah,
more training, and less oversight, right? They're just given
sure.
a go get this done. Tell us when it's done.
Yeah,
Figure it out along the way. And so right now, wildfires are they're called campaigns, just like a military campaign. And so once a campaign is underway, you have an overall objective, but it's largely fought with labor. It's very, very manpower intensive. And once in a while, you get an airplane that shows up and steals some media glory and drops some red sludge here and there. And when the cameras leave, the airplanes often leave too. But there's like no big mighty tech available to fight these wildfires. It's basically cut down trees in front of the fire so you can deprive the fire of fuel, which is one of the things that fire needs, right? So
hmm
fire has to have fuel, you have to have oxygen, you have to have heat, you have to have chemical reaction. So anything that you do that takes away any of those things, the fire goes out. So traditionally, fuel deprivation has been the model, and guys with chainsaws, axes, rakes, shovels, basic hand tools, or what I would call medieval gardening tools, are what's being sent out there to accomplish this purpose. And when fires were small and the consequences of them were relatively meager, that was fine. The thing is that now fires are huge and the consequences are immense. We're now talking, billions and billions of dollars in losses from these fires. So because the risk is so much higher, the attack strategies have got to keep pace. And they
sure.
hadn't, because the fire industry is very slow to change, like many industries, right? So what I wanted to find out was, if you took away all the limitations of how we've done it in the past and say, this is a fresh problem, new start, clean slate, how would you go about attacking fires now? Don't tell me about what you did 6,000 years ago with Stone Age tools. What would it take to put these fires out now? And people said, well, you can't really, because the wind is in control of the fire. Like, okay, well, I disagree with the first part. There's never you can't. I mean, this is America. This is the land of you can. Right? We're Americans, not
Right.
Americans,
Not
right?
Americans. Yeah.
Right. So, but a great insight in saying the wind owns the fire. Well, if you know that the wind owns the fire, then you have to own the wind. And essentially, if you could own the wind, you could control virtually any wildfire you wanted. So how do we control the wind? Well, you can't. No, actually, you can. Jet engines make tremendous amount of wind exhaust. It's coming out with great velocity and volume. And if you point these artificial winds made by jet engines at a fire, you can control the direction the fire goes in. The fire always goes where the predominant wind is going. So if you have these, 20-mile-an-hour adverse winds driving a fire towards your city, and you push back with a wall of 200-mile-an-hour winds going the opposite way, what do you think is going to happen to the fire?
Different direction. Right.
Right. It's going to go out. Right. You're going to
Yeah.
basically push those flame tips back over the area that's already burned. You're going to use convection to push the heat away. You're going to be driving retardants at the fire front, which simultaneously put the fire out and coat the fuels in front of the fire with retardants. that fire is not going anywhere except, down into the fire grave.
Sure.
So, right. So that was the basic precept that I had, that if you could control the wind, which you can do using jet engines, then you could have a really powerful technology that would get these fires under control. And so I started Team Wildfire with some engineers and some really great fire chiefs, Andy Amalfitano and Dan Eamon, who were fire chiefs here in Boulder, Colorado. And I invited them over and I said, look, this is what I'm thinking about. Am I nuts? And they said, well, yes, you're nuts. And this is also a good idea that could work. So they both left their day jobs and came on full time to help develop the technology and then get the technology out in the hands of the people who need it. So it's
Now,
been quite a mission.
it sounds like an amazing idea, because you're right. The folks who go out there with the chainsaws and the rakes and the shovels and the things like that, um, ton of manual labor
Yeah.
to do that. It takes a lot. Plus, it's dangerous, right? Because
Yeah.
shift in the wind, like you said, you can't control the wind without technology like yours. But a shift in the wind could now put them in a place where they're stuck, and the firefighters have been killed in these wildfires, and it's a dangerous job. And
Absolutely.
anything we could do to make it safer, I
Yeah.
think is certainly worth a shot, right?
Right. You not only get this artificial wind technology using the jet engines, you mount it on trucks that are like logging trucks that
Hmm.
can go to where the fire is. So you don't have to wait till the fire gets to the nearest road. And you make that equipment remote controlled capable and autonomous capable, so that
Okay.
you stop putting firefighters in the line of fire. I'm sure the military and DARPA is working on the same things, right? The soldier of the future won't be a human, right?
Right.
There'll be a human controlling it and setting strategies and objectives, but technology will figure out how to accomplish the purpose. And
Well,
when we do that,
in a lot of
then
ways, that's already being done with like drones, and they have
yes,
like the robots that go in to like the bomb squad or EOD. They go in and
right.
they use the robots, and yeah, there's a human controlling it, but he could be on the other side of the planet controlling it.
That's right. They
And
and literally are, right. They're
yeah,
sitting in a silo somewhere in Wisconsin,
right.
operating a drone over the Middle East.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
so that type of thing can happen, and so yeah, why are we putting firefighters out there in the middle of the forest where they're killing themselves almost, like with all this hard work, when we can put this fire out? And like how effective is it, as far as like how quickly can a fire be put out? And I suppose that's a loaded question, because it depends on the size of the fire, I'm sure, too. But
all
you know
questions are always loaded. Be
yeah.
careful when you point that thing.
Yeah, right. I'm pointing it in your direction right now, but
Okay.
um, uh, what, eh, for a maybe an average size forest fire, like how long would it take for this type of technology to put out the fire?
Much faster and much more safely, and
Yeah.
much more efficiently in terms of water. Because when you
Okay.
drive a stream of water, that the cross section of that stream is solid, right? So
Sure.
only the water on the surface of that stream interacts with the fire. Most of
Oh,
the
right. Okay.
most of that stream just shoots right through the fire and lands on the ground on the other side. Whereas when you turn the water into mist, you multiply that surface area of your water and your retardants by thousands of times. So
Hmm.
you're able to absorb much more heat. You're able to have the chemicals that are in your retardant interact much more effectively with the fire. You're able to spread it out over a much larger area. And all of your firefighting liquids remain airborne where the fire is much longer, right?
Sure.
They remain airborne until they hit the fire. They don't just punch a hole through the fire and waste all that water. So
Yeah.
it's somewhere between 6 and 10 times more efficient on the use of water, and certainly faster, because you can cover a wide swath. This is basically, a shotgun versus a rifle. You're
Yeah.
blasting out a large cone of air that contains misted retardants. So you're going to be able to put multiple trees out at once, drip the burning leaves off of them, uh, push all that fire content back. And because of the number of droplets you have, they'll bind to embers that would normally just take off, and that's called ember cast. So
Yeah.
if you can bind that ember cast and precipitate it, then you can stop additional fires from starting. And these other fires start, 2 miles, 40 miles, quite a distance away.
Yeah.
So that's called spotting, when one fire becomes multiple fires.
Yeah.
And
And then they
you're
become they
surrounded,
kind of
right?
converge together and become this massive, huge
That's what
thing, right?
happened with my hair, right? Little spot of baldness here, 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 and then the spots all converge.
And then
And then you get
then it's all gone.
aerodynamic,
You,
pyro effective haircut.
you got scorched earth going on up
Right.
there.
Yeah. Nothing to burn though.
But so that's actually a good way to think of it. I never thought of. I'm not a scientist, so I don't think of these things. But
You
I don't.
might be. You might be, Scott.
Oh, I might have. I never was really good at science classes in school when I took them. But
Oh, me
um,
neither.
so
Seriously.
maybe I might have a little bit in me. But when you started explaining it, it made a whole lot of sense, because that one giant stream of water might seem like it's really effective, but yeah, it's punching through, and then there's a lot of wasted water. But whereas those droplets, thousands and thousands, millions probably of droplets going out, um, their their surface area is able to cover a whole lot more, as opposed to just that one
Yeah.
stream
About
of water.
95% of the water shot in a hose is wasted.
Wow.
Well, and if you think about where these fires occur and the logistics that
Yeah.
people went through to get that water there, only to waste most of it, that's hugely expensive. The carbon footprint of transporting water to these fires is enormous. So if you can put out the fire with less water,
Yeah.
you've increased the efficiency of your campaign tremendously.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about exactly what you just said. Um, these fires are super remote a lot of times. They're out in the middle of nowhere, and where's the closest fire hydrant? The closest water source. It might be a lake.
Yeah, it might be a lake, a swimming
Or
pool,
something like that.
uh,
Yeah, and they have to
yeah,
figure out how to get the
sewage
water from
plant,
there
whatever.
uh, to the fire, and that's not an easy task. So
No, it's
yeah, the
not.
less water that they need to use, the better. And I think most importantly, though, the safety factor that we talked about is
Yeah.
huge. It makes it tremendously safer for the firefighters involved. They don't have to be standing literally at the front line of the fire. They could be, a mile or more, probably even away, controlling this thing remotely, and be relatively safe while they're doing it. And so um, I'd imagine they probably want to have multiple units deployed to the area to take
Hundreds of
care of it.
them.
No, yeah, multiple.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you
and
want to have them stored nearby.
yeah,
So I think of this a lot the way you might think about helicopters on the roof of hospitals, right? It's sitting there all the time in the areas where it might be needed in case you need it. And if you
yeah.
need it, you got it.
You
But
need
you
it; it's
can't,
there.
you don't want your 911 dispatcher like going through the yellow pages trying to find helicopter companies while
Sure.
you're bleeding out at the intersection,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's like, hey, we want that guy on standby. We want him, not more than 10-minute flight time from anywhere in its service area.
Yeah.
And if it's 12 minutes away, then we want to go to the next helicopter over that's only 8 minutes away, right? So,
That's right. Yeah.
like a cellular network of response. And we want to have the same thing for Team Wildfire's technology, is that municipalities could have a what they call a pre-positioned asset contract or an exclusive use contract, guaranteeing that they have that equipment where they need it on standby. So if anything happens, we can
Yeah.
respond quickly. Because whether it's 1,000-acre fire, 100,000-acre fire, or multi-million-acre fire, it all starts with a single point of ignition.
Yeah.
And your best strategy is get there fast and knock it down before it's a big problem.
Exactly. Yeah. The faster you can get that initial ignition point uh, taken out, then there's less likelihood that it's going to spread to become these massive mega fires.
That's right.
And that having that asset deployed all over the place, so you don't have to wait for, if you're in Colorado, you don't have to wait for something from California to arrive or something,
Right. That's right.
drastic like that. It's just there, just like you call 911 for a heart attack or a car accident or something, and within a couple minutes the ambulance shows up and is there to help. You want to have those sorts of assets around. Gotta imagine it's pretty expensive to have those assets, but the flip side is the expense of the fire if you just
Yeah, that's
let the
exactly
fires
right.
burn, right? So
Yeah.
you got to weigh that cost. Do you want the fires, or do you want do you want to be able to prevent the
Right. Do you
fires,
want the
or
helicopters?
kill
You
stuff?
want people dying of level 1 trauma injuries,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. And
So it's a
so
trade-off. And if you just looked at it economically, if our technology costs the same as a helicopter, um, and a helicopter is saving individual lives on an occasional basis, whereas the Team Wildfire Hurricanes on Wheels are saving entire communities,
yeah.
it's more cost effective in terms of dollars invested versus dollars lost.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to never have been involved in fires like that, any of these big wildfires. But I've seen the videos of people, and their houses are just devastated, and whole
Torched.
communities, they're torched, and seeing people driving through areas that the fire is coming through. It's like at some point
Terrifying.
you don't know if you're going to be able to make it through that fire, and turning around isn't an option either. And so
Yeah, well, the roads are often on fire.
yeah.
The cars fail themselves because the oxygen levels are so depleted that
Mm,
the cars themselves don't function. So
but
one of the technologies that we are patenting is an oxygen supplementation technology that goes basically into the intake of your engine, where the air would normally come in. We can feed oxygen directly in there so that your fire trucks, your ambulances, your police cars don't just crap out because the oxygen level of the ambient air went so low because of the fire consuming all the oxygen. So there's a
yeah.
lot of little intricacies downstream that have to be considered if you want to have a reliable technology.
Yeah, because if you can't get the truck there with the technology that's going to save everything, if you can't get it to where it needs to be, then
Yeah,
it's
or if you
it's
can't get it out when you need it, the
yeah.
fire comes through, the oxygen levels drop, the ignition fails, and now the fire comes and eats your big $1 million truck.
Right, exactly. And that's
Happens,
that's
right? Yeah,
that's not an ideal situation either.
right.
um
And then you
so
talked about people trying to get away from the fire. So,
yeah,
whatever
I mean, if you could have
whatever
those.
path they decide, that's we'd say that's their evacuation route.
Yeah.
Well, evacuation routes right now are soft. That means that they're vulnerable to fire. You have pine trees on both sides of your evacuation route, and they burn and fall over. That's it. You're not going anywhere. You're going to die in the fire.
Yeah.
So evacuation route hardening is another way we want to use this technology. Basically, drive down a road, jet engines pointing left and right, driving retardants and suppressants into the trees in advance of a fire. Some of these retardants can last, months or more. So
Okay.
once a month, you drive down that road, you make sure that the trees on either side have been made resistant to fire so that if people have to leave, they can.
Yeah, and that's a more of a preventative measure. It's pre the fire happening, but
Yeah.
again, you never know when or where a fire is going to take place. So
They're,
having
they're
that
getting
preventative.
pretty good at that, actually.
Okay.
There's some companies that are developing pretty high predictive accuracy with their ability to tell you where and when the next fire will be. Now, getting people to listen is another story, uh, but
Well,
we can tell them.
it's that mindset of, it's not going to happen to me, or it's not going to happen to my community, that type of thing.
Right.
That happens to other people. I don't have to worry about that. But it's like, yeah, okay, fine, until you do have to worry about it, and then you really got to worry about it, and you got
Yeah.
to you got
There's
to do
not time
something
to
for it.
worry about it then. So let's just assume it's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and make your plan. have what you need in your car, have a couple of weeks of your prescription meds, have water, have food, have a
Yeah.
way to get in touch with your family members if you're coming from different places, have a rendezvous point. Uh, yes, go ahead and do that now, because you will neither have the time nor the presence of mind to do that at the time. So you
Right.
pre-plan, and then you can actually reduce your risk of fire for your home. Um, Communities supposedly do this on a community-wide basis, but I think it's preferential to do what you can actually have control over, which is your house,
Right.
right? You can, you can pre-apply long-term retardants. You can use intumescent paints. You can seal up your gutters properly with screens so they're not collecting flammable leaves. You can seal the vents to your house so that embers don't go in there. That's embers that spread fire to houses. The
Yeah.
embers land and they start burning up the wooden mulch around your garden that's touching your house, right? Or the embers get into the vents up in your attic and light your attic on fire. And when firefighters are driving past houses and they're deciding what's salvageable and what's not, if your roof's on fire, they're driving by. That's it. That's considered, that it's on its
That's
way
a
to being
loss.
lost. So
Yeah.
let's not waste time with that, right? There's a triage process. Only so many trucks, only so many firefighters, almost so much water. So if they're going to expend those resources, they're going to do it on the most survivable houses. So if you allow your house to be vulnerable because you haven't taken the proper precautions, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but that's they have to. There's only so many resources, and they have to pick and choose the ones that they know that they're going to be able to salvage.
Yeah.
And if yeah, like you said,
If they even
if
have
it's
the
already
option.
too far, yeah,
I live up in the mountains over Boulder, and 2 years ago this month, December 30th, 2 years ago, the Marshall Fire swept
mm,
through the towns of Superior, Marshall, Louisville, and demolished 1,000 homes in the course of a day. It was the most destructive fire in the state, and there was not a darn thing they could do about it.
wow,
100-mile-an-hour winds were driving these fires. The firefighters would decide, hey, let's save this house. They'd pull up, they'd point a hose. Before they knew it, the hose went limp because the fire had just eaten the hose. And
wow,
those fires were coming faster than they could get the trucks out of there. So what we're seeing is really catastrophes on a level we haven't seen before. And as you guys know in the military, like the response has to be proportional to the threat.
yeah,
Right? If they're coming at you with howitzers, you can't stand there with your 45.
right,
As,
exactly.
as
You got
lovely
to
as your 45 is, and as time proven, like it's not the tool for the job.
right. And I was going to say that earlier too, because the technology that you're talking about, it's it's a great technology, but this is the type of thing that you want to use on this big scale type fires. You've got to pick the right tool for the job. This is sounds like the perfect job, perfect tool for these wildfires. I don't know if you necessarily would uh, want the jet engine type technology to be pointing at somebody's house, although it may work, but you're not going to be able to get inside to the house with this
Depends whose
giant
house it
thing.
is, but
Yeah, that's true. That is true. You're not getting in my house
right.
with that
I
type
mean,
of
there
thing.
are times where you could use this technology to point at a test house if you want to see, does this house really stand up to the 100-mile-an-hour winds that the manufacturer says it would?
Mhm.
So you could test basically what would the impact of a hurricane be on a home by
Yeah,
using a mobile hurricane.
sure.
But that would be destructive testing, which is not what most people would want their houses subjected to.
Like I said, you're not doing it at my house.
Yeah, right, right.
But
Uh,
thinking about things like, okay, so houses is one thing, but also like military installations.
Absolutely.
We're bringing it back to the military, right? But from a national defense perspective,
Oh,
um,
huge.
if you have a military base that's getting overrun by wildfires or something like that, the that's
No
that's a
different than
threat
terrorists, right? I mean,
yeah,
it is dead. Non-functional, it's non-functional, and the cause doesn't matter. So your
exactly.
response has to be equal to the threat's capabilities, regardless of what the threat is.
Yeah.
If I told you the town of Marshall is going to be torched to the ground by arsonists, terrorist arsonists, you'd say, wow, well, we're going to launch $100 billion military response and stop that from happening, right?
Right.
But if we say, well, that town is going to be burned to the ground by fire, well, we'll send some fire departments, we'll do what we can, you know.
Sure.
Hey, I mean, the 1,000 people are still out of their homes. So what's the difference whether it was a foreign enemy or, a domestic chemical reaction, pyrolysis? Like the effect is the same. So I think that the response level should be the same. And particularly in the military bases, I'm sure you've got fans of your podcasts out there at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And, every year they've got to pack up the whole base, send thousands of aircraft, thousands of people, send them down to New Mexico because fire season's coming through. The base is unusable. They're worried about the airplanes being burned up. They're worried about the personnel, not being able to survive the smoke. Well, what does that cost? And this is, incalculable expense and nuisance.
Yeah.
But whereas if you could guarantee that the base wouldn't burn because you had applied retardant over, let's say, a 2-mile protective barrier all around it, then you could say, okay, guys, it's going to get a little smoky here, but we're not going to lose the base. Everyone keep it together. The fire's going to come through. It's going to go around us. It'll be scary. We'll cough a little bit, but we don't have to relocate. We don't have to evacuate this base.
Yeah.
And that scenario is repeated, on bases, around the world. So I think the ability to protect these bases and the assets and the people in them is something that would be very financially efficient to do, using this technology. Basically, like a giant spray can of fire retardant that you could surround your
Sure.
base with.
I'm even thinking of it like, a military base, with the guard towers on, all around the base. Like,
Yeah,
why not have these big jet engines around the base that can just be, turned and pointed to the area that maybe
absolutely.
a fire is coming, and take care of it that way. The same way you would if, go back to the terrorism example. You got terrorists who are trying to overrun a base or something. Like they're coming up and they're attacking in a certain direction. Well, that's where you're going to turn your firepower and you're going to go shoot in that
Right.
direction. So why
Yep.
not shoot, the water and the retardants and the just blow the fire away that way. Literally
Yeah,
blow it away.
right. You literally could blow it away. And so you could certainly have fixed installations. In a fixed installation, because there's a limited range on the jet engine, just like there's a limited range on a rifle, you have to wait until the threat gets within the effective range of that tool,
Yeah.
whether it's the jet engine, the rifle, or whatever. Whereas if you supplement that capability with a mobile capability, then you can go out to that fire while it's still 2 miles out, and you can take care of it there rather than letting it consume all the vegetation,
Uh,
and get all the way to you. Although
right.
that is also a strategic thing you can do, right? You could say the fire's coming. Do we want to fight the fire on its terms or our terms? So
Right.
you light a fire right in front of your base, and then you use the jet engines to push that fire forward 1 mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, and you control the burn off of vegetation around your base. So now when this huge wall of fire comes, it stops when the fuel ends. And
Right.
so you've made basically a pre-burned out fire barrier, a fire break, uh, with controlled winds. So that's another way you can apply the same technology to increase your safety.
Yeah, and there's, like you said, there's you take any one of the components away that creates a fire, and it goes out. So take away that fuel source, the vegetation, and all the plant life that's around. Um, Now it has nothing left to consume, and it's going to just die out on its own kind of naturally. So
Yeah.
that's another way to do it. A lot of different ways, right?
You can credit the military for, the real name of that policy, which is the scorched earth policy,
Yeah, right.
right? There's
Exactly.
nothing there,
Exactly.
nothing to eat,
Um,
nothing to eat, nothing.
so going back to your Hollywood special effects career. We were talking in the beginning a little bit about like crossover opportunities for folks who were in the military, and some of the skill sets and stuff that might be useful in that type of career. And I hadn't really considered some of the crossover dynamics there. Um, what do you see from your side of things, that a service member who maybe is getting out of the military looking for a new career, what do they bring to the table when it comes to the special effects side of things?
Well, really, it goes on two sides. The first side is that they understand command structure. They understand being mission focused, safety minded, and teamwork. And these are things that are incredibly valuable on a film set. You don't have just, 250, 300 people milling around all doing their own thing. There's a command structure. There are departments. Each department has responsibilities. This way of doing business or conducting affairs is, deeply instilled in people who have a military background, as well as respectfulness.
Mm-hmm.
What the number one thing I look for when I'm hiring people is people who are polite. That's 80% of it, right?
Sure.
Polite, good listeners, prepared, physically fit, psychologically fit. They all start with P, right? Positive attitude, persistent. Planning, right? But you'll give me a kid with no experience, but who has good manners, a good attitude, understands the hierarchy, and willing to listen. I'll turn that guy into, or girl into, an amazing special effects tech. Now, if they bring prior experience, even better. And
Sure.
the experiences that they could bring would be working with pyrotechnics, working with fire suppression, working with firearms, working with hydrology. Are we making a flood in this thing? Are we making rain? Someone who has engineering experience, someone who has chemistry background, someone who has some understanding of basic physics. These are all things that are, taught in the military in different branches, in different sectors and specialty. I'm sure that there's nothing that we build in our effects shop that a good aircraft mechanic couldn't figure out how to do, with the experience that they got, in the Air Force or preparing aircraft for the military, right? It's, build this thing. Here are these tools. Here are the materials. Make it work, right? Now, when it comes to aircraft, of course, we have much more stringent standards. There's not just get this thing in the air by any means necessary, right? You have to follow some protocols, otherwise the risks can be huge.
For sure.
Yeah. And the same thing here, though, right? If we have an actor and he's going to be running down a road and there's stuff blowing up all around them, we need to make sure that the stuff that's blowing up is safe, that the explosions are the least amount of explosive necessary to create the effect. So we're not, pushing over the danger. Virtually everything that you see blown up on a movie is artificial. Not that it was created digitally, but that it's been replicated out of materials that are frangible, things that can blow up very easily. So the cars, they could be cast in urethane foam. The walls, the boxes that explode, they're made out of balsa wood, so that we're not creating dangerous projectiles. So in movies, the objective is to create the look of danger. And I would just define this career as, safely using science to create the illusion of danger. So we don't want to put anyone at risk. We're not saving lives out there. We're not saving democracy. We're just providing a couple hours of entertainment. So this is certainly not an area where it's worth anybody getting hurt.
No, for sure. Yeah, you don't want any injuries or deaths, or you don't want anything to happen like
But
that,
the
because
potential is always there, right? You're working in a remote area. You're working in a non-OSHA environment. You're working with electricity. You have all the lighting equipment. You have vehicles. And then when you get to the specifics of it, you have fire, you have rain, you have explosions. So the ability to have really good situational awareness is critical, right? I might be focusing on what I'm doing, and if I don't notice that the lighting guy didn't tether, the lighting poles properly, they could fall and kill me. So
Mm.
there's a lot of potential for, cross injuries between departments. So someone who's used to keep your eyes open, keep your 360 going, pay attention to the risks, notice, notify, and respond.
Yeah,
That's critical. And so my experience is that people who come from a military background have a pretty good sense of adeptness in all these areas, and that many of the actual job skills translate one to one.
yeah. I mean, in the military, there, like you said, there is that situational awareness that just gets ingrained in you, beaten into you, like you have it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
more and more
but
so, right? Because the enemy in many cases is not some guy overseas that you have to deploy. It's some guy sitting next to you in the barracks who, you know,
yeah, who
throws
forgets?
throws yeah, pops a valve, right? And I mean that happens too. So your awareness is always, not just when you're deployed.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many things that could go wrong. So having that situational awareness, but also an attention to detail, um,
Yes.
so that if you're supposed to set a charge that goes off, somewhere to the left, where the explosion goes off to the left, and you set it the wrong way, and now it's going to go off to the right where the actors are running through. Like that's a
Yeah.
bad thing. You don't want that. You want to make sure that it's going the right way. So, um, so you have that attention to detail as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
manual control too, right?
yeah,
I never set a string of explosives to be fired by a computer. The computer doesn't know if the actor tripped, and now we're going to waste the other 1,000 explosives because the whole thing just goes off,
yeah,
right?
right.
Or they stumbled and they fell on where the charge is. Like you're watching and you're triggering and you're really present,
Yeah,
and you have complete control over what's going on. Otherwise
yeah,
people are going to get hurt. And
y-
there's not a lot of departments. Typically, like, all right, if the caterer doesn't refrigerate the food, some people might get sick, right? If the drivers are late, you got a problem. But for the most part, people aren't going to die on a movie set unless it's special effects or armory departments did something wrong where they weren't focusing. It's not complicated. You just have to pay attention.
that's
Right?
right.
You
Yeah,
you can teach. I can teach any 5-year-old how to clear a firearm. Right?
that's
It's
right.
it's it's simple, and I have.
And
I but if you don't do it, the training doesn't mean anything.
right, exactly. And it's something that should be taught to people because there may be situations where a firearm is presented, or even
Yeah,
like
your
just
kids
any
are going in
basic.
and playing at somebody's house, and those kids
Yeah,
over there is like, hey, want to see my dad's gun? He doesn't know
right,
that I know where he keeps it,
right.
right?
You don't want one of the first things I taught my kids was, um, first off, if there is a gun present and there's not a adult nearby who's in control of it, get out of the situation. You don't want to
That's
be
it.
there
Leave.
because you don't know what's going to happen. That's how accidents happen. Get out of there. But I've taught them firearm safety. They know how to shoot guns. They know how to handle them safely, and they've done it many times, and
Yeah. And
nobody's
there's
gotten
no
hurt.
there's no
You know,
mystery taboo created. Like, ooh, what is that magical thing? I want to touch it. Like,
right?
no, I've handled it. My dad takes me out. My mom takes me out. There's
Yeah,
no mystery. I enjoy doing it. I'm not allured to it, and I know it's dangerous. And I
exactly.
know this is something I do with my parents, or I do with my scout leader, or I do with my, firearms instructor, my coach.
Right.
Like, there's a place for it where it's safe, and then there's the rest of the world where it's not.
It's just like using the oven or the stove or something. It's
Right.
like you not to put your hand over it because that
Right.
you're going to burn yourself, right? And that
Right. Yep.
that that's going to hurt. So you don't do that, and you learn these things over time. And the better training you have, the better life experiences that you have with these things, then the better off you're going to be. But talking about the military personnel who have gone through the training of how to use firearms, how to handle explosives, and how to um, you know use all of these things in a safe way. I
Yeah.
think just goes to that point of what we were talking about before, that there are some crossover opportunities there. And I wasn't intending on even talking about this aspect of it in this episode, but you kind of mentioned that, and it kind of triggered something for me. I was like, this is a good point, because people do get out of the military, and they don't know what that second act is going to be like.
Yeah, that's
What
right.
are they going to do? And personally, that's not something that just jumps to the top of mind. Like, what would I be qualified or capable of even doing? Hollywood special effects is not one of the things that jumps to mind.
Well, it
Um,
should be. It
it
should
should
be.
be. It really
Yeah.
should be, um, because there clearly there's a need for it. There's movies being made all the time, and people need those people making the movies. They need to have the special effects in there, but there's also folks who are getting out of the military and are scratching their head saying, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So,
Yeah.
why not check that
So,
out?
so if they did decide, that's the next question, because I'll probably get a bunch of emails after this. How do I get into the effects business? Right.
Yeah. Well,
So,
okay.
uh,
Go ahead.
so it's one of the. I wouldn't say it's like you have to know someone, but I would say someone has to know you.
Okay.
And so that means you got to get your face out there, and you have to go to work for somebody, even if it's starting out as a volunteer or an intern, to the point where you have their trust, because
Got it.
no one is going to risk their reputation or the lives of the rest of the crew on someone that they don't know.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with your resume, where you went to school, which theater of combat you were in. Like, I got to know you. I got to know that no matter what happens, you keep a level head.
Hmm.
That when I say, walk to that truck, get me a fire extinguisher, come back here, no delays. Right? That means that something's on fire, and I'll help, but we're not trying to trigger an alarm, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
my bad if the fire extinguisher wasn't already where it needed to be. But the way I got in is I identified a special effects coordinator, Gary Zeller. I had seen his work on a lot of movies. I wanted to go to work for him, and I track him down and I call him and I say, Gary, starting next week, I would like to come to work for you. I'll be your coffee boy. I'll carry your luggage. I'll clean your tools. I'll, spray, anti-rust stuff on your toys, whatever you need me to do. And you don't have to pay me. I just want the opportunity to be around you and learn from you. So he says, fine. See you Tuesday, see you Monday,
Sure.
whenever. Yeah. 2 weeks later, he hired me, and a year later we started a business together. But getting a one-on-one relationship with the person that you want to work with is key. And that's kind of a lost art, the idea of mentorship, internship. But as far as I know, that's the only way into this business.
Well, that's a good point, because especially for service members, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the program right now, but there's a program where for the last, I think it's 6 months of your military service, you're still technically a soldier, airman, marine, whatever.
Right.
You're still a service member, but you can go do an internship in the field
Great
that
idea.
you're interested in. You still get paid by the military,
Right.
as if you were doing your regular job, whatever it was. But you're off doing this internship in whatever
That's
field.
brilliant. That's
Um,
really brilliant.
and so you were saying that, and I was like, that it makes it even more perfect. Like
Right.
it sounded
Yeah. If
like a
you say,
pretty good
look, for the
fit.
next 6 months, I'm going to come work with you on set.
Yeah.
Put me to work however you need. I'm going to use, I don't have a financial need right now. So I have the opportunity to prove myself. What can I do to do that?
Yeah.
Boy, that's going to be a really strong candidate.
Sounds huge. Yeah, like it would be a great fit. And very similar to the military, what you were talking about with, um, I'm not going to put you in this position until I got in until I trust you to do certain jobs. In the military, you get new guys all the time.
Yeah.
People moving into one unit to another, and you know, you kind of want to learn to trust that person first. And until they've proven themselves, you're a little more hesitant around that person. You don't.
Right.
So, I mean, they all should be perfectly capable and qualified and everything like that, but there's still that little bit of doubt hangs around there, and you want to make sure that they're up to the task before you go and throw them in the
That's
deep
right.
end, right?
Right. Would I let this guy run belay when I'm rappelling?
Right. Yeah. And
Right. Does this guy
do
have
I
my
do I want
back?
to be a do I want to be a pancake at the bottom of the
Yeah, right.
the rope? You
You know,
know.
in the Swiss military during their rifle practice, it's very interesting. The line is always hot.
Okay.
So yes, they have to change targets and all that. Well, everyone gets their 2 meter lane, and they're shooting on 100 meter range, and you walk down range and you change your target while other people are shooting next to you, and you trust them to know the difference between you and the paper target,
I th- I
right? And
think that's
which, right? So we
I
would think
think
that's pretty hairy, but like that's how it's going to be in the real world, right? People are going to be shooting around you.
right.
The line never goes cold in an offensive, right? And some people are forward position and some people are back, and the people who are forward just have to trust that the people behind them can differentiate between them and who they're supposed to be shooting. So it's
I think
not
that's
that
why
extreme, right? But
I think that's why the Swiss don't get into too many conflicts, because they already know what it's like, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't
yeah,
want that.
right. I think every 18-year-old goes in, and then you keep your rifle and your handgun at home for the rest of your
Mhm.
life. So
Yeah,
100% firearms ownership.
yeah, and
You know,
they're
that's another thing that'll keep you out of conflict. You don't hear a lot about a lot of home invasions going on in Switzerland.
no, that's right. Yeah, because you don't really want to be walking into that room when
No,
you know
no,
there's a rifle behind that door. You know,
yeah, a nice
so
six hour.
when things go sideways, will you be prepared? Some people are concerned they might have to go for a long time without electricity or even food. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you can use now and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat, and if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve. You'll enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/drive-on so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/drive-on, but hurry, these deals won't last long. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to 4patriots.com/drive-on. Yeah, right. Um, so I'm just trying to think. Is there any other um, information you want to share with the audience about the technology that you've developed, um, uh, or anything along those lines that might kind of entice some people to want to get more involved and know a little bit more about what it is that you guys do, and where can they
Yeah.
go to find out more information?
Well, if you wanted to keep up with what we're up to, you could go to our website at teamwildfire.com. And from there, you could link to our YouTube page, and we regularly post video of our latest trials. What are we working on in the lab? How are we testing different mist nozzles? How are we testing the position of the nozzle relative to the jet engine, the particle size of the retardants that we're shooting? There's a lot of science to be done to make this a really efficient strategy. So it's not just that we're committed to inventing a thing that puts out wildfires. We're committed to making that thing better all the time. And that'll be for the life of the company. How can we do this faster, safer, more efficiently, less loss of life,
Yeah.
more protection of property. So, like in some objectives, like you won, right? You set a goal, you won. Here, you're just trying to get better and better at winning all the time. Because the fires are going to get more and more severe, and so your skill level and the capabilities of your technology have to continue to increase. So this is not a situation where, okay, we built the fire truck, we're good to go. Like, it's always got to get better. So
Right.
what size jet engines, what size platforms we put them on? Are we going to have one that goes on a moped? Are we going to have one that goes on a UTV? Or are we going to have one that goes on a giant, 50,000 pound logging truck? So based on the needs of putting out any given fire, there'll be different platforms, just like you have different platforms that are appropriate in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sometimes you send a rowboat, sometimes you send a cutter, sometimes you send, an aircraft carrier. Right. It's just,
Right.
what are you fighting?
Exactly. You got to get the right tool for the job, right?
Yeah. And, personally, I'm driven by curiosity. I just want to know, like, what would happen if we did this? What would happen if we did that? And then what's the outcome? And then that guides, the direction for the next bit of investigation.
Yeah.
For me personally now, a lot of my job is now relegated to CEO duties, which are things like fundraising. How do we, get the next round of investment to advance our company? How do we continue to de-risk the technology so that it becomes a safer and safer investment? So the same type of strategic thinking, but unfortunately, I don't get to play in the lab as often as I used to, and as much as I like to.
Sure.
But because of they're people with good engineering skills, many of them come from the military. I could tell those guys, go in there, test these 6 jet engines, figure out what the fuel consumption rate is for different amounts of retardant that we need to spread, so that we know how much fuel to send with the truck, per hour of deployment, right? And these are challenges that are also fun to do. And I think it's a nice way to take a skill that you've learned for a military purpose and apply it in a civilian context, where you're also saving lives,
Yeah.
where you're also minimizing property damage, and you're also doing something really positive.
Well, and you look at different military operations that take place around the country, and I know we joke about the Coast Guard in the military as not being a real branch of the military, but they still are part of the military. But they go around, they help in rescues of hurricanes and
Yeah.
floods and other things like that. They're out there on the helicopters and the boats and everything, helping people, saving lives all the time. And
Yes.
without them, there'd be so many people who would be just absolutely devastated, or even
It'd be
not
at the
even
bottom of
here.
the ocean. Yep.
Exactly. And so they have that mission, and it's all around the country. They're up in the Great Lakes, they're in the Gulf, they're
Yep.
on both coasts, they're all over the place, and they're out there doing this job. And I think there's a place for the fire protection as well. Whether it's in
Yes.
a military setting or in a civilian firefighting setting, that I don't know, but there is a place for that, because there's a need. People need to have that protection from these fires. So
Yes.
I appreciate everything that you
And
do.
internationally, and when people say, "What are
That's
you
true.
building?" I said, "Well, we're building the SEAL Team 6 of wildfire suppression. You send us anywhere in the world to any fire,
Right.
and we'll get it done."
Yeah.
Uh, because most countries don't have full-time wildland firefighters. When they get 50 fires spring up in Greece on one day, they're not going to say, "Oh, send our full-time." Like what? They're sending guys who press olive oil for a living and say, "Go put on your outfit. Hopefully it still fits you, and meet me at the trucks. And if they're still running, we're going to go out and try to put some fire out."
Yeah. Right.
And those are the guys, unfortunately, who leave orphaned little kids at home
Yeah.
because they die. So why would any country send poorly trained, poorly equipped people to go do a dangerous job when you could call in an international team that does this for a living?
That's right.
And so that's our goal is, any continent, any country, if you're struggling with a wildfire problem, put your guys back at home where they're safe and call in Team Wildfire and let us come do it for you. That's where I see us, 10 years from now. That
That would be
highly
great.
specialized. It's not the post office; it's FedEx.
You can get the overnight delivery and it'll actually be there.
Yeah, right. Well, I just, and believe me, I have the utmost respect for every firefighter out there, but you're working in many cases with, equipment that's just not up to the task,
Yeah.
and an operation that is always mindful of the operation first, and the mission often secondarily. We're all going to go out there. We're all going to be safe. We all need food. We all need water. We all need a place to sleep, and we're going to put the fire out.
Yeah.
And when you get down to a smaller, more privatized function, then you get very specific action on the mission. So when Team Wildfire would go, we're going to put the fire out, and then we're going to also take care of the other things we need to do. But it becomes very mission centric. And that, to me, that's kind of the way I see the difference between, the post office and FedEx. The
Yeah.
post office is an enormous employer. If you can fill out the resume, you got a job, and if you can also deliver some mail, that'd be great too. Where when you privatize it and you say, okay, FedEx, here's the deal. Hey, if those letters aren't getting there on time, we're not getting paid. Our stockholders are pissed, right? And
Right.
the same for us, right? If we're not getting there and getting that fire knocked down, we're not doing our job and we're not getting paid.
Yeah.
So we have
So
a
you got the
financial incentive that's aligned with the mission.
Yep.
Which is not the case, in a lot of that industry.
Right.
The longer the fire goes, the more money everyone makes right now.
Which should be the opposite.
It should be the opposite. The faster you get that fire out, the more money you make.
Yeah.
And not the longer it burns.
Some of these departments with these firefighters, if they put that incentive in, like you knock down a fire in whatever amount of time, you get X amount of bonus or whatever.
Right.
You better believe those fires aren't going to last too long.
Right. But as it is right now, the longer the fire goes, the more overtime you make, the more days,
right.
Deployment you get, the more per diem you get, the more retardant they sell, the more airplane sorties they launch. Right. So there's just a financial incentive to fight the fire for as long as you can, not for as fast as you can. And I know all the guys out there doing that, they're doing their best to get those fires knocked down and to save lives and protect property. But it would also be good if the financial incentive was lined up with the mission.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems. I think with a lot of government agencies, you mentioned budget earlier, and I forget in what context you said. I think something with regards to the special effects,
moving Vandenberg, and
yeah, I kind of laughed to myself, and I wasn't going to say anything, but it kind of fits in with what we're talking about right now, because I was like, budgetary constraints in the military. A lot of times, I mean, there are some budgetary constraints, but a lot of times we're blowing ammo, we're wasting stuff, left and right, and
you're practicing, developing your skill set.
Exactly. Sure, we'll go with that. But it to me it was kind of funny because I was like, sometimes we were shooting way more than we needed to.
Yeah, right.
We weren't too, as a infantryman, I wasn't too concerned with the budget. That's somebody else's job. Don't send me the ammo if you don't want me to shoot it. So
yeah, there you go.
Anyways, so at this point in the show, we talked about kind of everything that you do, and I'll have the link to your website in the show notes as well for the listeners to check out. But at this point in the show, I like to add a little bit of humor. I know we joked about some other things, but for me, it's just a nice way to end the show with a little bit of jokes or whatever. And since we're on the topic of fires, I got a couple just kind of one-liner kind of jokes that
I have a feeling these are going to be dad jokes, right?
They're probably yeah, they'll qualify as dad jokes.
So we have an excuse.
I think if you don't like a dad joke, then you're not my friend, so it's fine.
I love a dad joke.
So did you hear about the fire in the shoe factory?
No, Scott, that sounds terrible. What happened?
Many souls were lost.
Bada bing.
Bada boom. Okay. But then I got a job at a factory that makes fire hydrants. The problem was I could never find a parking space.
That's great. Right. No parking 200 feet around.
Yeah, right.
That's funny. I like
Okay.
it. Those are good jokes.
Anyways, thank you for the feigned laughter there. With
No,
some
those
of
were
these
pretty good. I
jokes.
mean, you
As
know,
far as dad
I
jokes
like
go, they were okay.
I
But
anticipated these jokes, but they were funny when I read them, and they're just as funny
uh,
when you deliver them.
so thank you again for taking the time to share what you do with us. And I think for the folks out there listening, a couple takeaways that I see, there's the potential for a career in the special effects industry, but also in the firefighting
Hey,
industry
look,
as well, right?
I mean, Team Wildfire, at one point, we're going to employ, 7 to 10,000 people. The same trust factor is going to go in there. Who can I
I'm sure.
trust with this multi-million-dollar piece of equipment? Who's going to maintain it? If you know how to maintain heavy vehicles and jet engines, like, you got a job.
And who better to trust with that kind of stuff than people who've already been trusted with multi-million dollar vehicles and aircraft and other
Yeah,
things like that, right?
absolutely. No,
So
that would be a prime recommendation, on someone's application would be
absolutely.
the military experience.
So those are some of the big takeaways, and I think for anyone who has any sort of influence in the military, I think having this fire suppression technology in your arsenal to
Yeah.
protect bases and things like that, I think is going to be super huge. So definitely check out the link in the show notes and get in touch with them to find out more. So
Yeah.
thank you again.
And a lot of bases do prescribed fires. And we're looking for places to test this technology.
Yeah,
So if have access to or know somebody who's doing prescribed burns, please do get in touch with me. My cell phone number's on the website, and we could use your base as a location for perfecting the technology.
wonderful. And thank you again, Steve, for
Hey,
taking the time to
Scott,
join
thanks
us
so
and
much
everything.
for a great hour.
You bet. Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.